I'm comparing Maldives with Zanzibar now. So there was this news of recent of a particular lady that visited and she was raped. It was an unfortunate situation. So when this was going to be projected, it was projected as if when you go to Zanzibar, you're going to be raped, it's not safe, Africa is unsafe and everything. So it makes it seem like there is really nothing good. It's only about traveling out of, maybe going to the foreign English speaking, you get what I'm trying to say. And it's really sad because it's really sad. We need to be able to change this narrative. We Africans, I mean the African media, we have our own faults, really. I'm going to be honest, but we need to get to that point where we put professionalism over bias and stop making it seem like Africans are beneath and they can never stop being beneath. So that's
okay. I mean, I think I feel like we even pushed to stop you there because there's a lot more that you could have said, but that's the interesting thing about this. But I'll quickly get Flourish Chukura, who is correspondent with Deutsche Welle, our bureau chief right here in Lagos. What are your thoughts on generally international media's reportage on the continent?
I think that over the years, there has been an overemphasis on the bad news, like Francisca said. However, I think that at the same time, there is also this push for what we call solutions journalism, where people are trying to look for the good, trying to report in response to issues like this, in response to people complaining that why are you always focusing on the bad? But then we have to ask ourselves, yes, I know the emphasis is heavy on the bad things, but I don't necessarily think that some of those things that are being reported are, they are not made up. Do you understand what I'm saying? So do we then ignore the negative things that are happening? And by the way, I also want to mention that international media doesn't only report, it's not only Africa that they are reporting bad news about. I think generally that is the format of news. Global news is like sensationalism, because even if you think about the US and the way it's being reported, in many main international media organizations, you would think that you are not safe going to the US, that there's shootings happening everywhere, that, people are terrible and all of that. But that might not be the case. So I think that, yes, it is good to point out that international media focuses heavily on negative news, and we as international media also need to make the effort to report on positive things, but we shouldn't neglect the negative things, because that is the power of journalism. If you don't point out that these bad things are happening, that your government is corrupt, that injustices are happening here, the people are going to end up thinking that it's normal, but it's not. So yes, I think that we as, local journalists working with international media, we have the responsibility and the opportunity to do it. Because there are certain things that a local media organization cannot report on that only international media can. Because if a local media organization reports on it, they might get suspended or shut down. So we have the responsibility to actually hold governments and leaders and people in power responsible.
All right, we'll get back to you, Flourish. I mean, I even have 2 or 3 questions for you as my colleague. But then, Fisayo, how would you also answer this question? How would you describe the way international media reports in Africa?
Okay, so I'll come from a more in terms of research and just general studies. And the fact is that historically, yes, there's been negative reporting of Africa. We sort of we've seen some shift in more recent times. There's been a decline in some kinds of negative reporting, which you can think of all the Africa is a poor place, there's no water kind of stories, to yes, there's a rise in a reporting of conflicts and the negative side of the government, but there's also an increase in the reporting of success, business success stories. So think of the pay stack exits, think of those success stories of fundings of startups And it's kind of where my domain is. So there's also a rise in those kinds of stories, and those kinds of stories also bring investors and people interested in doing positive stuff for Africa. However, the truth is that yes, there is that negative side of the reporting by international media, and you can also look at the aspect of this, how these stories are told and the kind of stories that are being told. And international media, let me just say, generally can't really report those stories unless they are here. And I think that's one of the good sides
that's why we have our correspondents.
Setting international media, being here, being present here to tell the stories the way it's supposed to be told.
Yeah, I mean, you make a very valid point. You talk about what stories are being reported, what pictures are being used, what kind of words are being used, what approach is being given to the story. All these things go into eventually what comes out of a story. But I mean, one thing clearly that comes out from all that you guys have said is that there seems to be a clear opinion that it seems there's an over-reportage of these challenges from the continent, or problems, or maybe, as you say, exaggeration of what's happening on the continent. How different is that, though? I'm coming to you, Flourish, starting with that. How different is it comparing how international media reports on the continent and how local media, I'm talking local media, reports on the continent? To you, Flourish.
Okay. I don't think it's very different. Because, to be honest, if I go on a local media station, I'm not hearing them saying, oh, this is, the great thing that, not all the time. It's not like that. Do you understand? But I think that it's different when I say my country is like rubbish, and when another person comes from outside and says your country is rubbish. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not the same thing. Even though I don't think that local media is doing enough to, I acknowledge the work that is being done in local media, that local media is doing, and I know that it is not easy, especially because, there is a limited amount of resources that they have. There is also a limit in terms of expertise and ability to actually do certain things that international media can do. So it's not really possible to make that direct comparison. But I do think that there is more work to be done from local media, especially given the kind of world that we live in, where everything is digital. So, maybe there can be more exploration in the digital space, because that is an equalizer in a sense.
Okay.
Yeah, Francisca, I will come to you. You mentioned something very sensitive that happened in Zanzibar, but I won't touch on that. I'll touch on something different. Let's assume you're writing a story, or you're reporting on a story of a malnutrition child. What type of picture would you use as a journalist? Because I've seen how people complain about the pictures that international media use. So you are a local journalist. Let's assume that. What type of picture would you use for such a story?
Okay. Maybe because I've seen exactly what you just said, I wouldn't use a picture. I don't necessarily have to use a picture of a black child in maybe a village looking malnourished. I mean, it doesn't mean that this thing is only happening in Africa. So that's exactly what I'm saying. That when you want to write a story like this, a typical journalist,
but this is a story from Africa.
The first thing they go to is, I need a black child that is looking malnourished in a village.
Yeah, but my question is of a story from Africa. Are you going to go and pick a white child?
Of course I'm going to pick a black child, because it's Africa.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
If I want to talk about malnutrition generally, I could use any picture. I don't necessarily have to use a black child. But if it's Africa, of course.
What type of a picture?
Africa, of a child that is malnourished, looks malnourished. That's what I'm going to say.
So why do we have a problem then if
when international media uses those pictures?
I mean, you can come in here, Collins. I mean, it's the same story. What's the difference between?
Yeah.
Okay, so I just said something about exaggeration. So that's what I have a problem with. I agree with you that it's not as if most of these things do not happen in Africa. But does it mean it doesn't happen anywhere else? Do you get? And even let's assume that it's happening at the moment and they need to touch on Africa because that is what is happening for it. Let me give a practical example. The issue of Naira notes and the difficulty and all of that, the fuel scarcity and how you have to stay on a long queue to get fuel, electricity at the moment, it's happening. But they make it seem like these things, the hardship is peculiar to Africa. I'm streamlined because I'm a Nigerian and I'm experiencing this as a Nigerian. And you said, sorry, Fisayo said something, his last point, you also said it. He said something about the fact that most of the international media, that they have their representative in other African countries to report the stories happening in Africa. I would give a response to that. So it's a simple thing. He who pays the piper dictates the tune. I cannot work for a media house that has like an agenda and then I go against my boss's agenda or my
Eddy,
organization's agenda because I know I've not gotten a job in TomTom, so I have to do what.
Okay, based on your story, 3 of us are pipers.
I mean,
Who pays them?
yeah. I think it's only fair that Flourish comes in. Does it make any difference when you're a local working in your own country, reporting for international media?
Does it make any difference how?
Does it make a difference if, do you think
Okay.
there's something that you can bring
Yes.
on board that could make things different?
Okay, yes. The answer to that is yes. But I also want to respond to what Francisca said, because I think a lot of times people just say things without any evidence. Like, oh, these people, they have an agenda, they are over-exaggerating. Somebody is going to take what you've said and echo the same thing without any evidence. How many people actually watch international TV? How many people
watch
of you actually
international
watch international TV? Like every day.
Which one? BBC? You watch DW?
Okay, so BBC is yeah, but like many people don't actually. It is statistics. Like when you look at it, TV viewership has like plummeted, not just in Nigeria, all over the world. So a lot of the things that people say are not actually fact-based. You talk about the child that is malnourished and all of that. Eddy and Josey, you guys know that nobody's going to put up a malnourished child, image of just like that, like without it being actually
Telling the story.
Yes, exactly. Nobody's going to do that because even ethically, you can't just use children just like that. Do you understand? So a lot of these things that people say, they don't actually have evidence to back it up. It's just people saying things. That's one. Then secondly, it doesn't make a difference that me as an African am telling my own, like our own stories here. I think it does. And I think that that is what, it's not just, yes, that's what DW is trying to do, and not just DW, but a lot of other international media organizations, their correspondents are like from Africa, are from like those countries where they are. And the whole point is, it's a different thing, like I said before, when I, as a Nigerian, in Nigeria, experiencing everything that is going on in Nigeria, is telling the world that this guy, like whoever is like in charge, authority, is corrupt or is not doing what he's supposed to do, as opposed to, let's say, a white guy coming to say, it's a different story. It changes the whole dynamic, in my opinion.
Okay. Fisayo, I think you also want to say something about this before we move to the next question, right?
I think they actually have valid points. It seemed like there's like a for or against debate in this, and I'm kind of like in the middle and just like observing. But
that was
I
a
think,
strategy.
actually, I'm actually in the middle, and I think yes, there's also the fact of the the person that pays and how they want you to dictate what exactly goes on. But I think there is something to be said about having local presence, reporting the news or reporting something that happens here, events, because there's the danger of Chimamanda's 2009 TED Talk, the danger of a single story and how these people come and tell your stories. There's nothing like you telling your own story by yourself. I have a friend, Tayo, I know, he went to, I think it was Portugal, and he interviewed people and he asked them, like, what is the first thing that comes to your mind when you think about Africa? And so many people said poverty. So there is that myth, there is that bias already. And when there is international media sort of covering it and then doing that story and extending that, the story the way it is, it just changes the mind of the reader or whoever it is that is perceiving that information.
Yeah, it's interesting. Something Flourish said earlier, that she'd rather be the one to tell the negative stories as a local person or as a black person than for an international media person. I guess white person in this case, based on your example, to tell that story. But what is it then? Because we're still trying to figure out if there seems to be any hidden agenda there, right? I mean, I'm saying this, and I know my bosses are watching, even right here in this room. It's like, what are we trying to say here? Do we go into an office and start planning things? Okay, what do we want to report? What do we want to get from that? Is that really the case? But to what extent, coming to you, Sia, to what extent does a stereotype or bias, play a role in the kind of reports from international media, I think?
So, there are certain myths that people, or like foreign people, have about Africa. People can see Africa as, and again, you look at the news, you see like 50% of Nigerians are multidimensionally poor. That's over 100 million people that live on less than $1 a day. There's the myths of Africa is exotic, or Africa is, there's just certain myths about Africa, and all of those things kind of play a role in the reporting. Historically, or like previously, there's usually been media like Reuters, AP, that report stuff on Africa that they used to have correspondence here, or that have correspondence here. And when people just pick those stories and re-report them, there's a modification of that story, and it would definitely fit certain biases of the people who report those stories, but they didn't get those stories originally. So yes, stereotypes will always come into play, especially when there is no ground, there are no boots on ground.
Okay. I come to you, Flourish, now. I mean, there's something that you also mentioned. I'm going to put aside the fact that we're colleagues, yeah? On this one, you're on your own. You spoke about emphasis, that the international media has emphasis on the negative stories. You are here in Nigeria. What's stopping you from reporting on or emphasizing on the positive side? What's stopping you from doing that? Because I feel, for me, sitting in Germany, whenever you pitch stories, you do try to balance. I mean, even yesterday you mentioned about winning the Grammys. I'll give you evidence. They're checking our Facebook page. We have that post. We have that post on our Facebook page. So we don't. No, we didn't. I mean, what do you mean touched on it? What do you mean we did? Oh my word. Anyway, so Flourish, my question is, what's really is there anything that is stopping you from emphasizing on the positive stories from Nigeria? Because, I mean, when you pitch, obviously the editors will give you a go-ahead. Do we have a hidden room somewhere at Deutsche Welle that we say, no, this one, or yes, this one?
Okay, so for DW specifically, I mean, we're not trying to, maybe we have a hidden agenda of promoting DW, but there is no such thing. I was telling Eddy that nobody has ever said, no, you can't do this story, or no, let's focus more on the bad parts, or anything like that. There's nothing like that. And I think that boils down to, the question, does international media have an agenda? Well, international media, there are different types of international media, and different people, everyone has an agenda. Why would they spend money to hire people to stay here, if they don't actually have an agenda? Now, when you say agenda, it's not creepy, but for DW, for example, our part of what we want to achieve is to promote discussions and conversations among people, dialogue, and to hold governments accountable. Normal journalistic things. But there are other media organizations that their agenda is to make money. And so they have to promote what sells. And if putting up a picture of a hungry child is what sells, they'll put it up and they'll make their money because they have bills to pay. But an organization like DW, for example, we are public broadcasters, so we don't have that burden on us to make profits. in that sense. So which is why our own, approach is different. But no, we don't have any creepy hidden agenda.
I think that on the matter of like those type of things, especially now with digital media, and to the question that you asked her about like what is stopping her from reporting the positive sides, I think for me one of the reasons why I majored in economics in school, and I was like, I wanted to see how best I could tell stories of like the Nigerian economy. So I started like making those kind of videos on my channel, making like detailed, well-researched finance videos. And I always say it everywhere, like I was lucky to interview like the deputy governor of the CBN on the issue of the e-naira, and the people who created the e-naira. A lot of people were like, oh, they've paid you to make this video, but no single currency was exchanged. I deeply cared about this story, and we made, like my editors are here, we spent weeks making these videos. And for me, it's just like, how best can we, because with the influx of digital media, like if you go on Twitter now, you see what is trending, and it is very easy to engineer what is trending. It is very easy to hire a lot of people to speak on certain things and make it trend. The best way is to actually like figure out don't just rely on one source again, figure out the best way to go about digital media, or go about like certain kinds of reporting on digital media. So,
okay. Yeah. Cool.
I'll just stop there for now.
Yeah. I mean, if you just joined our live stream, we're having a very interesting discussion talking about, does the international media have a hidden agenda in Africa? And I don't know if so far we gather that they do or they do not. That is still up to you guys. Now, there's going to be time to ask questions to our panel members here. So if you have anything, you can put it down, and then you can let them have it. We'll dedicate at least 5 minutes or so, Josey, right, to questions. But just to sort of move the discussion forward a bit, because this discussion can take 2 hours, even more if we want to really dig into it. Why is it even important that we are talking about this? Let's look at the concrete implications of a constant negative representation of the continent in international media. Can we sort of bring it to the ground? Let me start with you.
Okay, I'm going to answer this question with a practical example. So this is a real-time experience. I went for a training sometimes in 2021, and then the trainer is Australian, but she's based in Dubai. So she had to come to Nigeria to train the rest of the team. It was like a whole lot for me to be able to convince her to come down to Nigeria. The first thing she said is, Francisca, because I trust you, that's the first step that would make me want to come, because I've experienced you for about a month, and I know you are a good girl and all of that. So the next thing she said was, if I don't see you at the airport, I'm not going to come with the person or the people coming to pick me. And I'm not a protocol officer. The company has a protocol officer, so it took a lot. Finally, she came around and she told me that her jewelry, she wasn't putting on any jewelry, not even earrings, not even nothing. And I'm like, what happened? She said, they told me in Nigeria, you can't use jewelries. Like, it's a big deal. When you go on the streets, they can just take off the... I'm like, where did you get this from? I was so shocked.
I'm seeing a lot of people with jewelry here.
I had to take it upon myself to take her around Lagos. I made her experience good places. I made her know that, it doesn't mean that bad things do not happen here, but we live here. I was born in Nigeria. I'm a true Nigerian, and I can say very beautiful things about Nigeria. So you see how the media has succeeded in setting that particular agenda. And if you ask her, most of it, she sees them on international media platforms. She sees them on the social media platform. It was saying something about the social media. No matter how important and beautiful the social media is, and it has captured like everyone, majority of us depend on the social media. As a journalist, we still have to go back and do our fact-finding process, and we still go back to the mainstream media to confirm some information. So what I just said now should have answered your question, because that's a very big reason why we need to address all of this. Let's project the good things about Africa. Yes, we're experiencing difficulties. We have a lot of things that are not going on well with us, but does it mean that these other countries too do not experience them? Let us stop hammering on this bad thing. Let's talk about the good things as well.
Okay. Oh, wow. A round of applause for you there. Now, Flourish, the same questions. What are the actual implications on the ground on how Africa is covered?
Wow. So there are lots of implications, economic implications, and even, for countries and for individuals. So a lot of people would actually not invest their money in many African countries because all they know is war and, hunger and suffering. And so, why would they invest in those countries? And even when you, as an individual, are traveling, we all, always talk about the Nigerian green passport. Just looking at that passport alone at the airport, you are treated differently. Sometimes there are certain airports that you go to just because you are in Nigeria and they will take you aside.
But I have a question before you continue on that, your passport. I've been coming to Nigeria several times, and I've also noticed how your own Nigerian immigration treats you as a Nigerian. So is it really the international people, or rather media, or it's also a problem that is starting from here, from within the home?
Yes. So I think it's both ways. And this is where, again, I think that you cannot entirely blame the media. It's not just, the media doesn't solely, have the responsibility to say, the media is an easy target because who is going to answer you back? Or you say, oh, it's the media that is causing all these things, But there are other factors that come to play. It's not just the media. But specifically when I'm talking about when we travel outside, the way we are treated a lot of times is as a result of what is being reported about those countries. Nigerians are Yahoo boys, not Yahoo boys now. You guys don't call it Yahoo boys. 419. People, Nigerians will steal from you. Nigerians, all those kind of stories. That is what informs those decisions. Now, when it comes to us internally, the way we treat ourselves, that's a whole different conversation, I think.
Which we'll need 5 more hours to delve into, that's for sure. But I think it's very interesting point. I'm from Ghana. This is my first time in Nigeria. I am loving it so far.
Imagine.
You can give me a round of applause for being, thank you. I deserve that, thank you. No, but even with me, and I'll be honest, because I've not been here, of course I know Flourish and other people here who tell me exactly what's happening on the ground. But naturally, psychologically, I'll just think, ooh, okay, do I bring my laptop? Do I keep it at home? Or how exactly should I expose myself and all? And I caught myself and I was like, why am I thinking more in this direction? Instead of thinking, oh, I want to really go and, check out what Nigeria has to offer, talking about tourism and all. So for sure, it does affect a lot of things. It affects tourism, it affects investments, which then affects the economy. So many ripple effects of how people view the continent and how this affects all of these things. But trying to move it forward, Fisayo, we have social media now, so you're not totally dependent on some sort of physical structure that is doing things. You can easily pick up your phone, which you're doing in so many ways, and try to tell the other side of the story. What's stopping people from doing that? Do you sense that's growing, or what's your take on that?
So I think that because just like I spoke about earlier, because of the rise of social media or digital media now, there's the thing that the UN calls civil journalism or civilian journalism, citizen journalism, where anybody can report anything the way they want. And for them to get clicks, they have to sensationalize. There's the rise of bloggers or people who have their own independent websites. And obviously, I'm somebody that makes money online, and I know that if I put a good title and a good picture, I will get clicks and I will make money from what I put. Yes. So I think, like I said again, don't rely on one source. Also do your own part to report news that is false. Twitter also has this fact-checking. Make sure you also follow fact-checking accounts. But Twitter has a way that you can actually see articles. So don't just share negative news. Actually check and verify yourself, so that you don't hurt other people, because I'm somebody that has a lot of people that are following me now. It's so weird that I just, if I say something, people can actually make purchase decisions just because I had one tweet. Or people can actually cancel someone because I said something. So you want to make sure that you are also playing your own part in telling the right stories or telling the proper stories and reporting those negative stories. But also make sure you verify, don't rely on one source. And that's how you can actually keep the digital space safe.
I feel I saw Francisca shaking her head when you're talking about how much you make when you have to sort of sensationalize the titles and all of that. Francisca, do you have a problem with bloggers?
No, I don't have a problem with bloggers, but he was saying something about the fact that we all know that when you give a good title, I mean, before you know it, especially because he has a lot of people following, like he said, they'll say, we saw it on Fisayo's page. I mean, they feel, his followers would feel it's okay. I just remembered that before this conversation, we had a conversation in my office where we were talking about a particular headline. Even me, I didn't go further to find out the actual thing. It's about the recent happening in Osun State, the present governor of Osun State, and when he became the governor of Osun State, there was a news everywhere. There was one headline that he sacked. I can't remember the exact number of people, but it was ridiculous amount of people that he sacked them. And when we went further, my team members, a particular person on my team, went further to research on that particular headline and realized that it wasn't even anything close to that. So we're like, so why did they give it this particular headline? Because this man didn't even sack one person. He didn't even sack one person. So it was the issue of he was trying to check the people, the civil servants, and he realized that a lot of people are ghost workers. Their names are just there, but they are not really existing. Mm-hmm. And they released the number of people. So they just wrote it that he sacked them the first day, 24 hours after his swearing in. So, I mean, just me trying to acknowledge.
And this is all coming from the local media, not the international media, right?
No, this is not the international media.
We've been headlines. Okay. No, I was just trying to be sure. Anyway, I mean, we've spoken about the challenges, we've spoken about the narratives, but now let's talk about the solutions, right? How can we improve narratives about Africa in the media? Fisayo, let's start with you.
Okay, how we can improve narratives? I think we should be good people. I mean, it goes without saying, I'm somebody that I've traveled fairly well, I guess, I don't know. But whenever I go somewhere, there's a certain perception or a certain look that I would get because maybe of my skin color or just where I'm from. I've been in a train where they asked me to stand up, because of the way I look, which in a predominantly white place. So all of those things can actually, I was going to run for office at some point, or maybe a position in the House of Representatives. And someone actually offered, anyway. So I wrote a couple of things down, and I just realized that we don't have branding. If you look at Dubai, for instance, the government understands that if I help the businesses here to grow, I do the proper branding, I do the right advertising, they would get more people to come, more people would patronize these businesses. They will make more money and they will pay more taxes. We will all be rich together. So I think that there's so many factors involved, and it's not just media again, like you said, it's not just media. Forever and ever, we've always had the speaker-listener dynamic where there's always either a leader that speaks to his followers or a media organization that speaks to their fans or their subscribers. It will always be there. I think the best way is for us to find a way to tell those stories the right way and also hold the people in charge of us, in charge of our safety, in charge of our livelihoods, in charge of our infrastructure accountable with the media.
Flourish, anything to add to that? Yeah, thank you.
I think I like what Fisayo said about charity begins at home, because the reality is if there is no bad news on the ground to actually report, nobody's going to go outside and formulate something about Africa. So we need to clean up ourselves at home, first. That's the first step. But of course, that's going to take a long time before, we begin to see the effect of that. But I also think that we cannot say, oh, international media is bad, therefore cancel them and don't have anything to do with international media. I think there needs to be collaboration between international media and local journalists. And not just journalists, local media, yes, media generally, and people that are doing things like, for example, like Fisayo and Tayo Aino and other people, influencers that, that can project these positive stories. So international media can collaborate with these local storytellers to project our own, African stories. But at the same time, I also feel like we shouldn't just say because we want to project just the good, we are now forgetting about the bad. Because by talking about these things, the negative things that are happening, number one, we are holding leaders accountable. Number two, we are also, holding leaders accountable. I wanted to say also, bringing in aid and different things, because the world then knows what's happening in Africa and can actually help. Because the fact that, there are 50% of Africans live in poverty is a real problem. There are certain parts of Nigeria that you go, I know we in Lagos, we are like, no, don't tell those stories. But if you go to those places where people are actually affected by poverty, those people are begging to be heard. They want their stories to be told because they need help. And we as journalists cannot ignore all of that and say, oh no, because we want Africa to look good. We are not PR. It's our job to actually report what is going on.
Okay. We better watch the time before we run out of it. I think we're going to give...
No. I just had a question.
Okay, sure.
Because Fisayo is more of a blogger, right? Obviously, blogger. Yeah. Let's just. Yeah. But I've noticed that bloggers are winning the trust of the public. Compared to the mainstream journalists, compared to us, Eddy, our traditional way of doing journalism. What role could they play in changing the narratives?
I think that the reason why people trust like individuals. So there's the conundrum of personal brands and corporate brands, where I see this person as my friend. I'm in a room, now I have a team, but it's more like I'm speaking directly to you. I'm telling you how I feel about a product or a service or the new policy that the central bank has made. I'm telling you from my own perspective, from this guy that is seemingly, like my friend, and I can easily communicate those things. And there's no like censorship or, thank God, there's no censorship. And I can easily kind of say my mind in a way. I think people tend to trust that more. And it's unfortunate that people have tried to leverage on the fact that people trust people more to sort of spread false narratives. However, I think that, yes, just like she said, the collaboration can also work. I've seen where those collaborations can work, where you also, come here personally, tell stories, and people can then take action and, check out corporate media and what they are about. Because, one of the best stories I've told, and it seems, very meta now, is like DW also. I've been able to tell some stories. I was able to interview like very interesting people. And it was on the DW Shift platform. And it was just very interesting to see, because I kind of leveraged like the documentary skill and took it further. So yes, the collaboration is very important.
So you see that you're telling your own story on
Yes.
an international platform. So synergy is very important.
Yes. So
But before we take this discussion to the crowd, for questions, I figured that out, that Flourish is saying international media doesn't have a hidden agenda. Am I right or wrong?
Some international
Okay,
media.
Sam. Okay, Fisayo.
I think that everybody has an agenda.
Hidden.
Everybody has. Everybody has self-interest in something.
Hidden. The hidden
only
part is
reason-
what I wanted to know. If you say yes, then I wanted to ask that what is that hidden agenda you think DW has?
I can't answer that question. I don't think there's a direct
He pleads the
answer.
fifth. Okay.
Okay. Do you want to tell us what DW has, if they have a hidden agenda?
DW
Yes.
particularly.
I work for DW.
I think you should allow us to talk about international media, not DW.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, so I would say the reason behind this, I'm saying 80% international media as an hidden agenda. And I would say the reason, the obvious reason is because they always want us to be beneath. So yes, we are independent, but we are still mentally colonized. There's still the case of neo-colonization. So they want us to always think we're beneath, so always remain beneath, despite that good things comes out of Africa.
Hey, the things that get applause here. Have we been doing a different topic now? Okay, so here's the thing. Clearly, there are questions out there, I believe. Oh, nice. We've gotten some top-up time, so that helps.
Thank you for the top-up time.
Yeah. So we will have time to take, say, for now, we'll start with maybe 3 quick questions. We'll try to balance the genders as much as possible. So we'll take one lady. Yes, you have a microphone. Yeah, thank you. We'll take one lady, the lady on the left first. Yes,
Eddy,
let's start.
lady.
Yeah, it's okay. Let's start with the ladies first. That's good. So we take one from you, and then we take, yes, from the gentleman on your left, and then another one, and then we can dig into it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry. It's not a question, per
Sorry,
se.
please.
Introduce yourself, please.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm Karima Omobola, Creative Director of Carigo Creations. I just want to buttress a point from where Fisaya said, charity begins at home. I believe, like recently, this Naira, the issue of Naira, CBN put it out that they've minted stacks of cash is there. And this same CBN said bank policy should not put out more than 20,000 naira per day. So I think we putting it out there to the public that, okay, they've minted a lot, like 287 million, I think. But this same policy said, to the bank said they shouldn't give more than 20,000 naira per person in a day.
Okay.
So I think the way we tell our own story, even to for the international media to capture, it's dicey. Like
So you're
we are
blaming
not-
the local media?
Yes,
Okay.
like our own, we ourselves are the one not encouraging us. Like we are
Okay.
even.
You're
Mr.
not telling
President.
your own story the right
yes,
way.
we are not
and
telling
then-
our own stories
Okay.
the right way. Secondly, if you are talking about international news TV stations, we have CNN, we have BBC. Do we have like a TV station that represents us as Africa? Aside Al Jazeera, Al Jazeera is international. Do we have international TV station here in Africa?
I guess what you try, if I get you right, you're trying to say,
Pushes us to the world, yes.
yeah. If we get you right, are you trying to say if we have a strong media platform on the continent here that can then push our stories out there, right? I mean, something like what?
Yeah, she's saying like BBC, UK, DW,
Yeah.
Germany. So what is there for Africa? That's what she's trying
Yeah,
to say.
BBC Yoruba. I mean,
BBC Yoruba.
Yeah, which is linked with it. But anyway,
Anyway,
well,
thank you so much
let's-
for your points and your questions.
Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Omoni. I work with the Nigerian Communications Commission, and I'm the head of media relations. I've listened to you. I'm in fantastic conversation here. I'll be very brief because I have quite a number of dimensions to speak to. But first, you have to know that this has historical foundation. The fact that, there was colonialism, and so the countries in the Northern Hemisphere tend to have advantage in terms of production and technology, and by that fact, they also had dominance in media. And By 1976, it became obvious to the United Nations that there is imbalance in news flow, which is the reason why the Sean Migrants Commission was set up. And the committee report, which is in a book form called Many Voices, One Word, came out on how to rectify the imbalance. Now, I don't want to bore us with the historical thesis, but it's a fact, some of which Francisca had mentioned when she made reference to colonialism and neo-colonialism. But will that thesis, will it hold in this era of digital public communication culture that has given the freedom to every citizen who have access to the internet to tell the story of himself or herself, as well as the story of the nation? That narrative will not hold in saying there is a hidden agenda from the international media. Every media organization is set up, to propagate certain philosophy. Some are public media, some are for profit. Irrespective of the reason why any media is set up, they have to fulfill their own objective. Okay. But you have a Facebook account, you have a Twitter account, you are an African. We have 54 countries. It's impossible for us to gather to say we want to have a narrative that tells the entire story of the African continent. But we can ask the African Union to give us a strategy around it.
Okay.
Fisayo has over 400,000 followers. He's used that particular platform to tell the Nigerian story, whereas other people are discrediting. So whatever hidden agenda any international media may have concerning Africa, we are now empowered to counter because we have access to the digital media. What kind of story are we telling? Concretely, I will suggest this. In dealing with this, we have a long way to go. And one of the things we need to do is to go back to primary and secondary schools to honestly, to set the curriculum clearly, to say that information and media literacy must be a compulsory subject that people must study and pass. What does it teach? When you see a piece of information, interpret it from the context of your history, from the context of the objective of your own nation. You don't take things that you see hook, line, and sinker and just share. Before you share anything, ask. And we talk about fact-checking. Dubawa is there, African Check is there. People shouldn't just take a piece of information about Nigeria and put it online just because you want a lot of clicks and followers. You must be sure that it is correct.
Sir.
Let's tell our story in a way that
Thank you very
edifies.
much. Unfortunately,
Thank
we
you.
don't have so much time, but
Well said.
we really got your fix. Thank you so much for that contribution.
We'll take the last one, I think. A promise is a promise, so we'll stick to the third question. Briefly, if it's a question or an addition, a submission.
Hello, everyone. My name is Akinomi.
Please speak up.
Hello, everyone. My name is Akinomi. I'm a student, a designer, but my question is twofold. Not twofold. I have two things to say, rather. The first part was initially when you were asking questions about the picture of the child, the malnourished child, for global reporting of malnutrition. I figured that the idea is false correlates, because when you use the picture of an African child or whatever to represent something that is a global phenomenon, it brings false correlations, which could, in the African context, it could be correct, but globally it's a different thing. My second question is, this is actually my question. This starts with a premise. So, if all international media, local media, in some sense, that is wherever they are domiciled or wherever the headquarters is, they are subject to the laws and regulations in that place. Now, as Flourish mentioned earlier about how local news cannot report certain things for the fear of sanctions or regulations, how then, because if we reinterpret that, it means that all international media are local media and therefore they could be under government sanctions or whatnot. Now, in that sense, how do international media houses manage the pressure from government to influence reporting styles on certain subjects? So,
Okay.
That's a good question.
Would Flourish, if you want to take that.
Like I already mentioned, there are certain things that international media, just by virtue of the fact that they are not from here, have the privilege to report. And I say privilege because the local media, they cannot report on certain issues, unfortunately. because they would be sanctioned. You know, we've all seen cases of TV stations being shut down, newspaper houses being shut down. But in the case of international media, is the Nigerian government going to go to Germany to close down German station? No. And then most of what we do is, you want to say something?
How do they manage the pressure from their governments?
Mm-hmm. So, speaking from my own personal experience, I haven't. Did Angela Merkel ever call you?
I think she's not the right person to answer. Maybe these two, maybe Francisca?
So I think she's the right person.
No, she's saying Angela Merkel has never given a pressure. Is it local or international?
International. So we don't have that. You mean German international media pressure from German government?
Olaf Scholz, our chancellor, has never given us pressure.
So in most advanced countries, media organizations are independent. So they don't have that pressure they don't have that experience of governments actually sanctioning them. You only have those kind of experiences in countries like Nigeria.
Okay. So here's what we're going to do. Obviously, if there needs to be any clarifications on anything, once this is done, which is right about now, you can always get to our panel people and ask for, if anyone else has further questions. But we kind of have to stick to time. That's our job as moderators, myself and Josey.
We have to love and leave you, but we're still around, actually until Friday, and we'll be coming here every day if anybody has questions or wants to meet us. And I promise some of you that have followed us, our Facebook page, DW Africa, some goodies. So as soon as I come out of this stage, please see me. But now we have to bring to stage a very important person, Eddy.
Yes, she is the head of English Africa department, a department that Josey and I work in. Assumpta Latus is the head of department. Please give her a round of applause. Assumpta is basically going to introduce to you all, or to all of us, one of our flagship programs called Africalink, what it's about and, the future of it. Over to you, Assumpta.
Yes. Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for being here. That was a very, very important discussion that we all, from the English for Africa and also DW, are looking forward to implement most of your things that you have been saying. Well, the media is changing, and also the mentality and the mindset of people, not only the users, but also the partners, also changing. And for that reason, we're looking all the ways, all the solutions. We're looking for all the solutions that we can get so that we can get what you need. You, the people who are consuming that media. Today, everybody is here. Everybody is a content creator. Everybody is trying to consume media in a different way. Not like, when I was a little girl, for example, 7 o'clock, I'm from Tanzania, 7 o'clock my dad would sit down and say, okay, we're going to listen to news. TBC, Tanzania Broadcasting Corporation, was there, and we listened to Mwalimu Nyerere. I don't know if many of you know him, and then after that you get news from international media like the Deutsche Welle or the BBC or whatsoever. And I was really always thinking, why are those people speaking a little bit so funny? Because the accent is not really the one that I am speaking. The words they're using, they're not really the same. It's like, what is it that they're doing? I can't identify myself with those people who are speaking in those media. And I think for you as well, these are the things that probably can irritate you in saying that what you're talking about actually is not what I am. It's not what I think is necessary, and it's not what is really important for me. So what is it that we're trying to do? For over 6 months, we have been trying to revamp one of our very own English for Africa radio programs, which is called Africalink. And the aim is to make everything that Fusaro here have been saying, personalize that show, get the face of that show, And one of those faces actually is Eddy and Josey. Eddy and Josey. Josey coming from Zimbabwe, Eddy coming from Ghana, I from Tanzania, but we're not the whole team here. Please, the next slide. I mean, our team, and there you see, I mean, it's only a few of the people who are working for that show, and not only that show, I mean, like English for Africa, we're producing lots of other products as well, among them the 77%, the weekly magazine. But that, it's just a few people from 35 people who are working for that, for the team English for Africa. And we do have 50 people, correspondents from different countries. I mean, like, we cannot cover from all the countries, 54, but we have 50 from different countries. What is it that we want to do? We want to have this narrative. We have to change the narrative of saying that, yeah, they're speaking funny in a funny accent. We want that accent from here, from the people who are listening, to be in our radio show, to be in our products. And that's why we have decided to also not only put news, I mean, like international news on our program, but also we do have kind of showbiz. I mean, like some flashy, you know, nice to hear stories that we can always, and also positive stories. And also we would like to have our partner radio stations to take ownership of our programs. And I mean that, to take ownership in producing the program. Once a week, we go on the ground, we get our partner radio stations to be part of our programming so that we can, you know, get what really matters on the ground. And this is what we would want to do. So you are very important, not only to be on our radio show, but also for Facebook Lives, for example. Our radio our Africalink, it goes only for 30 minutes, but in that 30 minutes, you can join in and comment on the stories that we do live and say what you think. And it's quite interestingly, while I was listening to them, I was just looking at the comments on Facebook Live, and this is what we get every single day, that we're bad every single day. I think I need to stop here, but for that reason, I would like to invite you to start changing that narrative that we have always been watching, been listening. The change starts with you, and not only with international media. We are the one to change that. We are the storytellers from the ground and not from Germany. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you, Assumpta. Wow.
Yeah.
Deep words. Are we getting salary increment when we go back?
But hey, so hopefully you all understand a bit more what we do. I mean, as she said, the Africalink radio program is just one of many different products that we have out there. Audiovisual products, online content. Just go to our Facebook page, DW Africa. You can check us out also on our website, dw.com/Africa. There's so much content that I'm sure the young people, 77% of Africa's population are young people. And there's a lot of content out there that you can enjoy. Before we get kicked off the stage, Josey, we have to wrap it up. And thank you all for coming and being part of this. We've been talking about, does international media have a hidden agenda in Africa? Is it a yes? Is it a no? Is it a zo-zo? You guys will be the ones to figure that out. Yes. But I think it's been a very interesting discussion. Yeah, thank you very much
for joining us. My name is Josey Mahachi. So catch me on DW Africalink every day at 1700. Please. You're following us on Facebook page already, so you always listen to me. He's also on DW News. I think some of you have seen the handsome face on DW News.
If you've not, it's okay. Don't embarrass me here. It's okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And it goes like